This episode of the Pivot to Balance podcast is sponsored by Riverside.fm, the leading platform to record studio quality podcasts from anywhere. More than 70,000 other podcasts use Riverside, including myself, Gary Vee, Spotify, even the New York Times. What's amazing about Riverside is that when you're recording a podcast or remote interview, recording is independent of Wi-Fi stability, which is huge because content is recorded locally, which ensures reliable and uncompressed content quality. It is super intuitive and easy to use. Once your recording is done, you'll automatically be able to download separate audio and video tracks and edit your content with a few clicks. If you use social media, you also get magic clips from Riverside, which I love. So if you haven't tried Riverside yet, visit riverside.fm and use my code AK15, which is AKAY15, to start recording studio quality sound and video and get 15% off a membership plan. Once again, it's riverside.fm. Use code AKAY15 to start recording today. Hey, before we dive into this week's episode, if you've been enjoying the show, I'd love your support. Take just 10 seconds to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps others discover the wisdom and inspiration that I share on the Pivot to Balance podcast. Let's build a community of balance seekers together. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to share the love. Now let's dive into the episode. Hello and welcome to the Pivot to Balance podcast. I'm your host, AK, and I hope you're doing well. In a world that pulls us in a million different directions and with a billion distractions, finding balance can feel like an ambiguous quest. Join me on this podcast as I try to navigate life's twists and turns with mindfulness, purpose, and grace. In each episode, we will dive into topics like self-care, personal growth, mindset shifts by sharing practical insights, stories, and maybe even interviews. Get ready to pivot, to recalibrate, and find your balance. Follow the Pivot to Balance podcast, and I will see you on the other side. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the art of slow living and how that's actually going to help you become more productive. In the introduction of the podcast, I usually say, in a world that pulls us in a million different directions and with a billion distractions, finding balance can feel like an ambiguous quest. And I say that because the world is such a fast-paced environment, right? And balancing our lives is such a huge task. For me, I thought this would be an amazing topic to talk about because this month, which felt like a really long month, by the way, has definitely for me been about living very intentionally. I mean, in a world that's so, I feel like right now, I feel like the world is constantly pushing us to move faster, to achieve more, and constantly hustle. The concept of slow living might seem counterintuitive, but I have literally figured out in the last 31 days that moving slowly actually helps you get a lot of things done and in a much better way. Especially where we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have so many social media platforms that are telling us you have to hustle, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and also do this and that. I feel like at one point it just gets overwhelming and people start burning out and people start feeling burned out. And I think that's not life and that's not how you're supposed to live life. So let's go and look at what slow living actually means. Slow living isn't about doing everything at a snail's pace, right? It's about moving through life in a more intentional, in a more mindful way and focusing on quality over quantity. Slow living is a response for that fast-paced, instant gratification culture that is dominating our society right now. I did a little research and I found out that brains are actually not designed for all of this relentless speed of the modern life that we have right now. And I've always said that multitasking is just not for the brain. No matter how much you think you're focusing on two things and giving equal attention to both of those tasks, you're not. And it is definitely affecting the results of one or the other. And on the other hand, it's the high-speed living, which can lead to stress, burnout, and actually decrease productivity. There's this misconception that faster equals always better, both personally and professionally. I feel like right now, especially my generation, when I was growing up, there wasn't much of internet. And as I grew up, internet started happening in a much faster way. And I'm fully immersed in this high-speed digital world. And I mean, what neuroscience is telling you, listen, our brain needs the chance to process and reflect, which can enhance creativity and also enhance problem-solving skills. One of the things that I often do is I just blank out for a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes there. and I just stare into space. I have a lot of friends that are creative, and most people look at them and they think, oh, they're not doing anything in life. They're just sitting there and thinking all the time. Like there's a time to think and there's a time to take action, which I completely believe in. But for creative people, it takes a lot of time to sit and think about something, to process and reflect. And I think that's the best way to approach it, because for creative people, it is not about analyzing a situation. It's more about processing and reflecting on it. This month, I might have seemed very slow in a lot of social media platforms. I may have come across in a very slow manner on my podcast. I may not have been on schedule for everything. That's because I wanted to take a second to reflect on what it is that I'm doing. What am I saying on these podcasts? Is this making sense to me? Am I listening to it? How is this going to help another person? What kind of people am I trying to help? Why am I doing this? What is happening behind the scenes when I am recording these podcasts? Do I feel good? Do I not feel good? Which I don't think a lot of people do, because they think you just have to do things for the sake of doing it. Last episode, I talked about how you should stop planning and start taking action, which is completely different. When you compare that episode to this episode, over there, we're analyzing so many things, so many steps, trying to figure out what to do right, what to do wrong, which is wrong because you just need to take action. But at the same time, you also need to be aware of the kind of action you're taking, what that makes you feel like, what that's doing to you, how that's beneficial to your business or to your personal growth or whatever it is. One of the things that happens, even in the last episode I talked about it, is when you start planning so much, you kind of burn out because you're fast-paced there, because you're thinking too much, you're thinking and analyzing. Whereas if you take a moment to process things, which doesn't require you to sit and think about it, it requires you to sit and journal, or it requires you to sit and talk to someone. Just be casual about it. It's not like a very intentional way. It's not a very forceful way of sitting and, all right, so I'm going to think about what I said on that podcast, and I'm going to keep thinking about how I could have said it better. That is different from, okay, I'm going to think about what I said on this episode. Why did I say that? How do I think it's going to help people? That's it. It has to stop there. So there is thinking and reflecting, and there's criticizing. Two very different things, because you can self-criticize all day long, but you can only sit, process, and reflect for a couple of hours, because that is specific, that is measurable, that's actionable, that is result-driven. When you process and reflect, it's very different from sitting and overthinking and overanalyzing and over-criticizing yourself. I mean, it's so easy to say, take a moment, calm down, don't hustle and bustle. But how do we actually do that in such a busy lifestyle, in such a busy world that we have right now? A couple of things that I would say is stop multitasking, do a single task. And the second thing is it's okay to take breaks. Walk away from your computer, just go for a walk, or grab a cup of water, grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of lemon water, do something. Because what people don't understand is when you take breaks, it actually refreshes your cognitive resources, allowing you to maintain focus and creativity over longer periods. The third thing is to set boundaries, especially with technology. I've been following a lot of these executives on LinkedIn, and what I have learned from them is they have specific times when they check their emails, which I think is amazing, because most of us, and even I do this on a daily basis, where if I get a notification, I am someone that doesn't like having notifications on the screen or having badges show up on my phone. I like having a clear inbox on all places, on all platforms. But I think that's also a response of, if I don't get back to them immediately, they're going to think something. And one of the things that has happened to me recently is when I've stopped responding and when I stopped setting boundaries with how I was using my phone or my emails, was people started calling me because they didn't understand why I wasn't responding, which shows that we don't have boundaries, right? You need to be present with your surroundings, be present with your tasks outside of these times. You need to let people know, this is when I will be responding. This is when I will be checking my emails. This is when I'll do this. This is when I'll do that. There are so many stories on the internet of CEOs saying that they've swapped multitasking for mindful practices. And although stakeholders were worried that this might impact performance, they said that they actually saw a drastic improvement in their decision-making and overall company morale. And because people started showing up happier, they lost weight, they had good families, they had good relationships with their families, they've been happier than ever, and stock prices are going up. So I think it's important sometimes to take that risk for companies. Not all companies are going to do that, but I think it's a good start. On a personal level, start by identifying areas in your life that you feel like it's rushed and unfulfilling, and start incorporating short mindful exercises like single tasking. Stop multitasking. Start doing one task at a time. Go for a walk. Stop using your phone after 7 or 8 p.m. When you start implementing this, your brains are going to start rewiring to be more efficient and less stressed. One of the favorite things that I heard Indra Nooyi say is having a busy calendar does not make you productive. Slow living is not about sacrificing your ambition or productivity. It's about making sure you have a mindful approach to life. So, as I always say, take a deep breath. You need to be very mindful, because a lot of the times what happens is when we're not being mindful about why we're making certain decisions, we end up rushing and making the wrong choices. So make sure that you start implementing these. And that's all for today. Go grab a cup of lemon water, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.